Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's Environmental Scrutiny Committee meeting. My name is Councillor Adrian Findlay and I'm the Chairman of this committee. And to my right is Councillor Raymond Whitaker, Vice Chairman. Can I remind you that the audio-visual feed for this formal meeting is being recorded and will be loaded onto the County Council's website later today, and all your comments will remain accessible online. There is no fire drill planned for this morning. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the chamber through the exit doors behind you, through to the reception and out into the car park and await further instructions. Please have your mobiles, laptops, iPads on silent mode. The hearing loop is now activated. Requests to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman. I will try and ensure that everyone has the opportunity to ask questions and make contributions. I would appreciate contributions to be clear and concise and ask that you indicate early when you wish to speak. We'll now move on to the formal agenda. Apologies for absent and replacement members. Joseph, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Wimhurst to be replaced by Councillor Bailey Robinson, Councillor Woods to be replaced by Councillor Beecham, and Councillor Carrington to be replaced by Councillor Hill.
Thank you. Declarations of members' interest. Do any members wish to declare any interests? Thank you. If any members do wish to declare any interest at any time during the meeting, please make us aware. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting of the Environmental Scrutiny Committee held on the 16th of January 2026. This item is to approve the minutes of the meeting of the Environmental Scrutiny Committee held on the 16th of January 2026 as a correct record. The minutes can be found on pages 5 to 16 of the agenda pack. Do I have a proposer? Thank you. And a seconder? Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Those minutes are being agreed as a correct record. Announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Lead Officers. As Chairman, I have no announcements. Executive Councillors' announcements. Do we have any announcements by the Councillor Danny Brooks, Executive Councillor for the Environment?
Not a lot to announce today, Chairman, but thank you very much. Just to let you know that we still have only 3 Section 19s, which, due to the amount of rain we've had, is quite good. Hopefully we don't get too much more rain so that they don't go up, but no change on that from there. The waste, food waste is ongoing, and that's been, as you can see, the adverts for it. So there's not a lot more for me to announce, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Do we have any questions? No? Thank you. Finally, is there any announcements from senior officers? No. Thank you. Item 5, Humber 21 programme. This report provides an update of the Humber 21 Plus strategy and can be found on pages 17 to 22 of the agenda pack. The actions required by this committee that they acknowledge the work undertaken thus far across the Humber 21 Plus programme and recommends that the Executive Councillor for the Environment and the Executive Director for Place continue to work with associated partners to develop A, the strategic options for the estuary, and B, the future governance arrangements to take the programme forwards. I would like to welcome to this meeting Councillor Tom Ashton, who is the portfolio holder for planning at East Lindsey District Council, and Councillor Owen Beerley from West Lindsey District Council. This report will be presented by Matthew Harrison and Sue Manson. And I would also like to welcome Rachel Hughes, Head of Policy at Strategic West Lindsey District Council, and Alex Sorry, yeah, looking the other way. Alex Murphy, Officer Presenter for East Lindsey District Council. I will pass you over to Matthew and Sue to present this report, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everybody. If I may, I will take the report as read, but just give a very brief introduction before handing over to Sue, who has got a presentation to give, which will hopefully sort of bring to life some of the challenges that are being dealt with around the Humber estuary. This will be the third of the 2100 projects that will have been brought before committee. Previously, there's been the Lincolnshire Coast that has been presented, and the Fens, and the Humber is the third of the established 2100 programmes, which is looking at flood risk, water management and coastal change, and the critical issues that brings to us as a county in Lincolnshire. So I think, if I may, as I say, I will take the report as read. I'm happy to take questions afterwards, but for now, we'll pass over to Sue, who will give a presentation and go through some slides, which will hopefully help visualise what's happening across the Humber 2100 programme. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I'll just wait for the slides to be brought up. Thank you very much. So yeah, my name's Sue Manson. I work for the Environment Agency, and I'm Humber Technical Manager and Project Director for Humber 2100 Plus. So today I'm just going to take you through a bit of the background of the project, what we've undertaken so far, how we work together as a partnership, take you through some of the future risks that we're facing in the Humber, and then talk about the next steps, and then open it for discussion and questions. Next slide, please. So as Matthew said, this is the third of the projects that have been brought to this committee in terms of under that 2100 banner. And just on the right hand side there, you can see the different strategy areas that those three projects are covering. So it's a significant amount of Lincolnshire when you look at the three projects together. They're all distinct projects, but we have got some common challenges. And so as those three projects, we work very closely together. But because of those large geographies, we need to kind of remain as separate projects for a day-to-day management purpose. Next slide, please. So just a bit of background about the Humber and the area that we cover. There are 11 local authorities in there. It's quite an expansive floodplain, and that is where tidal flooding will be dominant over the next 100 years. So in some of those areas at the minute, tidal flooding might not be the main source of flooding. We acknowledge that there are multiple sources of flooding across all of those areas, but with the rising sea levels, that area is going to get larger. In terms of what's at risk in that area, we've got over 500,000 people, 200,000 properties, large-scale businesses, important chemical and manufacturing industry from a local perspective and a national perspective. There's a lot of road and rail and energy infrastructure. We've got the largest port complex by tonnage in the UK when you look at Hull, Grimsby, Immingham and Goole. And on top of that, it's really important as an agricultural region. We've got over 120,000 hectares of agricultural land. And back in 2013, when there was a tidal surge, we had over 7,000 hectares of that flooded. But it's also internationally important for habitats, and it's designated both under UK and international law. So there are various things that we have to do to comply with that legislation. Next slide, please. So what is Humber 2100 Plus? There is an existing strategy around managing tidal risk in the Humber. It's called Planning for the Rising Tides, that was published in 2008. But following the tidal surge in 2013, it was clear that we needed to think about things differently. We needed to work collectively together to be able to manage some of the challenges that we would face in the future. As I just said, we had over 7,000 hectares of land flooded. We had significant impacts to the port of Immingham. There were significant impacts all the way down the east coast following that. And out of that came Humber 2100 Plus. We're working in partnership to look at how we manage flood risk now and into the future, and thinking about redefining that strategic approach into the future. There are 11 local authorities across that whole area, so there are lots of different challenges working with a large partnership, but we're kind of being open and honest. We don't have all the answers yet, but by working collectively together, we can navigate this difficult situation and try and set the direction for the next 100 years. Yeah, next slide, please. So I guess, why is this important to Greater Lincolnshire? What you can see there is just kind of a zoom in on the areas that are within Lincolnshire itself. We've got a significant area of land impacted, including some key settlements, including important industry. We've got an opportunity via the kind of local government reorganisation to think about how can we take advantage of what some of those opportunities may bring, and obviously the new mayoral combined authority. So we've got opportunities there to think about, can we do things differently? As I said earlier, we've got that connection to the other 2100 projects. I guess there's an opportunity here for Lincolnshire to have a significant voice on the national stage. You're one of the ones that are facing some of these challenges from this changing climate that we're currently seeing at the moment. Everyone's very aware that we've had a lot of rainfall this winter. This is a here and now problem. This isn't just a future problem. And Lincolnshire has that opportunity to kind of have a voice in terms of national government and thinking about how do we manage things differently. Next slide, please. So what has the partnership been doing? As I said, we've got an existing strategy. We knew we needed to do things differently. We'd started working together following that tidal surge, looking at that tidal dominance. The partnership expanded from an initial place with those core partners around the estuary to include other partners such as West Lindsey, who we have here today, when we looked at where that tidal dominance becomes really critical. And as a result of all of that, it was clear that we had an emerging partnership. Not everyone was in the same place. Not everyone had the same understanding of the risk that we were trying to manage. And so we've been really working hard recently on making sure we've got a really good baseline so everyone's in the same place. And we've built this stepped approach. So we said, if we're going to need to do things differently, we need to make sure we understand the problem. Then we need to think about what we're going to do about it. What are the possible options out there? And then how do we implement that plan? And so we've got that three-stepped approach, and we've just got to the end of that kind of understanding risk at the top of step one, where last year we kind of were in a really good place with that endorsement. And as the report indicates, we're now looking at kind of developing that agree approaches piece. Next slide, please. So just to kind of set out how that kind of all fits together, what we've got on the screen in front of you is a cog network to say this is a really complex problem. There are a lot of challenges in there, but actually we need to we don't know all the answers now. We're never going to know all the answers for something that's might seem a long way away, but what we need to make sure we're doing is not maladapting. So actually, by looking at things now, having this kind of reflective approach, being able to incorporate new information means we can move forward now, we can manage risk now, and we can think about the future at the same time. Because there are a range of variables from sea level rise, government policy, funding rules, economic prosperity, and social norms. All of those are going to evolve through time, and we have to accept that and acknowledge that, but we need to be able to manage what we're facing now on a day-to-day basis. Next slide, please. And so what we've created is this understanding risk evidence base. The officers of Lincolnshire County Council, along with your elected members, have been heavily involved in helping shape this evidence base, telling us what we need to be able to understand, what we need to be able to answer, and how that clear picture of tidal risk might change over time based under different baseline interventions. When we kind of developed that stepped approach, we were kind of potentially criticised for talking about 2100, but this is actually a problem now. So what we've done in that baseline is we've looked at 25 years, 50 years, as well as the long term, so that people can see how that evolution's kind of changing. We got that report endorsed in spring 2025, and now we've kind of been working towards developing products that can be shared externally so that we can talk about what we've done as a partnership and what that risk looks like. Next slide, please. So we've developed a range of kind of implications that have come out of the evidence base in terms of what does this tell us about the climate impacts, what does it tell us about managing risk differently, and what do we need to do about managing the risk in a different way. And what the overriding evidence has pointed to is that we've got an interconnected system, so the Humber estuary acts as one. What we do on the North Bank has implications for the South Bank and vice versa. Decisions taken in the outer estuary will have implications in the inner estuary and the tidal rivers. Hence needing to make sure we've got all the partners in the room at the same time as we're talking about this. Next slide, please. So in terms of a bit more detail on what we're talking about in terms of those climate impacts and managing risk differently. So we're saying that actually, unless we kind of think about this, unless we kind of work out how we're going to manage this risk, we would have whole scale land use change. The scale of sea level rise means that at some point in the future, the estuary is going to face significant challenges. It's going to have a substantial impact on the things we value about the area, including the role of the Humber and its hinterland in terms of UK as a whole. And it's going to put additional pressure on assets on a daily basis, increasing those maintenance costs and likelihood of failure. And I said that interconnectivity of risk is kind of really critical because adaptive approaches mean that all partners in that partnership need to work together to be able to deliver the long-term aspirations. And finally, in terms of what do we mean about adaptive approaches, it means how are we going to respond over time? How are we going to ensure we don't have maladaptation? How can we kind of accommodate the face of the scale of challenge we're going to see? Next slide, please. So in terms of that risk, what you can see here is the different time epochs that we've looked at. So we've looked, as I say, 25 years, 50 years, and then in 100 years' time. And the key message to take from this is that risk increases kind of even in the short term by 2046, which is actually only 20 years away now. That those kind of exclamation marks are getting darker under those different scenarios. So in terms of maintained defences, that means all the existing infrastructure we've got in place is looked after. We kind of minimise risks of breaches and things, but we're not raising those defences in height to respond to rising sea levels. Status quo at the bottom would be implementing the existing strategy. And that looks quite bad quite quickly, I suppose, because we've extended the strategy area to what that 2008 strategy had. It didn't have all of Doncaster, all of Selby, some of West Lindsey were not part of that strategy area. We've understood following the evidence what happened in 2013 with the tidal surge that actually we needed to kind of update our understanding of tidal flooding. So what are we going to be doing now we know that risk is going to get worse? How might we do things differently? Next slide, please. We brought everyone in the partnership together in November last year, and that included kind of directors and portfolio holders from across the partnership. Councillor Brooks joined us on the day, as did Matthew, and we had a discussion about how do we develop those agree approaches, that next step for the project. And in the room, we also kind of had key representatives such as ADA, the Association of Drainage Boards. We had the RFCC chairs to kind of be able to shape what that discussion for the next steps. And the focus of the discussion was about, so we know we've got risk. We know that business as usual isn't going to work. So how do we do things differently? Because there was an acknowledgement in the room that there isn't a single organisation as part of this partnership that has got the remit along with the geographic coverage to make some of the decisions. Collectively, we can do that, but there are going to be trade-offs over time. And so how do we navigate our way through that? And one of the culminations of the outcome from that summit is that part of the next steps mean that we need to undertake this governance review. We need to look at the art of the possible and see what that future shape could be. Next slide, please. So the case for change. We know that we need a strategic approach because of that interconnectedness. We know that the assets that we've already got around the estuary are really important, but we know that asset management alone probably isn't going to allow us to respond to the rising sea levels. Maintaining them in good condition is going to be expensive, but we still need to do that. But over time, because of that rising sea levels, they're going to overtop more frequently, so people would flood more often. It's not going to happen gradually. It's probably likely that you'll end up with 2 or 3 extreme events that kind of put the pressure on those assets, and then we'll become kind of overwhelmed and damaged, and we'll have kind of a system that's not operating as effectively as it needs to. So in that context, reaching the current growth ambitions are going to be really challenging. So we've got to think outside the box to how we respond to increasing risk along with that declining standard of protection. Next slide, please. I've only got a couple more. So the place challenge. We know that retaining what we have, we're going to run into challenges and we won't be able to just preserve places as they are. However, if we took a transformational approach, there's a huge opportunity to think about how we might be able to shape that future. But to do that, we kind of need to do that in a coordinated way, and we need to take the strategic decisions at the landscape scale. You know, placemaking can be active and positive. We don't want to be being reactive and negative to kind of defense failures around the landscape. So we want to think, how do we do this now before the tide decides for us? And that's what kind of the ambition of the next phase of the project is, the time to kind of develop those choices and think about how we keep up with the challenges of those rising sea levels over those different timescales. So we've got different places in a different, through that epoch of time, will be in a different place. So next steps, please. So this is kind of a slide around how we're kind of shaping how we'll deliver this over the next kind of 18 months or so. So we're putting together an internal approval to get further funding to undertake this governance review. And we're doing all of that under an umbrella called a Humber 2100 programme. So we need to think about the long term, but we're putting in place a strategic approach to our asset maintenance. We've recognised how important that asset maintenance work is to ensure that we've got the time and space to think about the future whilst actually responding to the now. But we also know from kind of feedback from other projects that have been in this situation that to secure the likely funding that we're going to need to secure to deliver that asset maintenance work, we're going to need to know where we're going in the long term. And alongside that, we'll be doing some other work internally within the organisation in terms of making sure that evidence base is within our systems so it can support things such as spatial planning and other things. But we've kind of know that it says plan for 2046 programme of delivery. As I said, we've only got kind of 20 years, and some of that is not due to the rising sea level, it's to do with the state of our assets. So don't be too unduly alarmed by that. That date there is purely on that kind of ensuring that our assets can stand up to the increased loadings that they're going to take. They'll be tested more frequently, but we're not so worried about them overtopping in that time period. It will happen, but not to the scale that we're looking at by the end of the century. Next slide, please. So next steps. We need to kind of ensure that each of those 11 partners plus ourselves, so 12 in total, establish what their own ambition and appetite for the next steps are. So Following the summit, we sent everyone away to kind of go away and say, as an organisation, how do you want to participate in this? Are you willing to work with us on that governance review and kind of think about what that future place might be? And then based on that partner's appetite, we'll be kind of defining the scope and ambition for the next steps. I say we can't do that alone. We have to do that in partnership, and we have to understand where all partners are. But that set aside, I say the Environment Agency will be developing that case for that investment in the strategic asset management in the short term. And we had a project board internally recently where we've kind of had support to suggest that that kind of governance review piece of work will need to happen. We just need to kind of work out the logistics of it. But what is going to be happening during 2026 is a series of workshops where yourselves will be invited as a partner to kind of explore further what that question of the future might be, so that we can start to think about how we might adapt and respond to this in the future. What you can see on the right there are the possibilities ahead of us, and as an organisation, the Environment Agency would like to be in that green space, but we've recognised we can't do that alone. We can only do that in partnership. That's a summary of where we are as a project at the moment in terms of Humber 2100 and the challenges that we're facing. So I think there's one more slide, isn't there, just for
Thank you very much. Very comprehensive and informative. Right, before I invite members to speak or ask questions, I would any of our East or West Lindsey representatives like to contribute before we go to questions? Councillor Thomas.
Thank you very much. As always with the Humber 2100, I think the figures that really do speak to themselves. That 500,000 population is absolutely critical, and the economic growth, the economic activity on that Humber region is what really underpins Humber 2100, and fully appreciate the great sensitivities around the underlying data and the future risk, and the necessity of the continuing economic development and growth in that area that's essential to ensuring that funding for the work that we know is needed is there. And you'll see from that map that in East Lindsey, all three of the 2100 projects that we've got going on in Lincolnshire all come together and all impact on East Lindsey. And as we know, there isn't a definitive line on the map, or there isn't a line in the sand on the Lincolnshire coast that equates to the line on that map where Humber finishes and the Lincolnshire coast begins. It's not a hard and fast line. The thing I would always say is that we need a commonality of approach between each of these different 2100 areas to appreciate we haven't got the 500,000 population sitting behind the seawall on the Lincolnshire coast, but the people that are living there need exactly the same assurance that the same level of investment, the same attention is going to be given to that bit of the coast as there is on the Humber.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Do any other West or East Lindsey representatives like to add to it? You're more than welcome to come in during the conversations at any point. Thank you. Right, I'd like now to invite members of the committee to ask questions and comments. Do we have any speakers, please? Yeah, Councillor Hill.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, I think fully support that we need to work, as from a Lincolnshire perspective, need to work with the Humber estuary and those issues. I mean, with all due respect, it's not a question of just sea level rising. It's also about the land is tilting, and also we've got a huge area in the Humber and Lincolnshire which is below sea level. So good we work together. It is a very high level document, and there is an urgency now that if we are to secure the secure Lincolnshire and the Humberside area from flooding, we need to be getting on. So I'm a bit concerned that next phase, I will have some workshops, and I just wonder how quickly we can get to the stage where there is a collective plan to put to government, because we are talking huge sums of money required. In Lincolnshire alone, as Councillor Brooks knows, there's the Environment Agency is saying to repair the seawalls is going to cost huge sums of money. And at this stage, there is no indication where this money is coming from. So I suppose from my perspective, how quickly can we get to a step as to deciding what needs doing? And then there presumably will have to be some sort of prioritization as to what's done first, because even with the best will in the world, all of this can't be done. I'm afraid I'm totally ignorant of what the sea defence situation is in the south in the Humber, but I certainly do know the situation in Lincolnshire. And I suppose the worry is we work together. Are we going to be sure that from a Lincolnshire perspective, the money will be made available, whatever money there is? And I think the council itself has got to come to terms with the fact that we will have to invest, because the way things work these days is partnership funding is all about it. So I think it's a difficult decision we'll have to make, but in the future, I think the county council will have to invest itself to then have a collective investment. But I suppose my concern is that there is a lot of industry on the south bank of the Humber, particularly, and obviously got Hull and Grimsby. So there's a lot to defend there, where if you're sat in London, what you're looking at on the east coast of Lincolnshire, there is not too much there. And we know agricultural land doesn't rate very highly in terms of defences. And of course, council made a decision, I think rightly, to pull out of the nuclear waste facility, but there is nothing now on the east coast which actually has to be defended. So I think there is a risk from a county council perspective that we could lose out because it's felt that Humber's more important. So I suppose the reassurance that I'm looking for is that as this thing develops and we come up with, first of all, this is what needs to happen. Secondly, these are the priorities government or whoever Environment Agency we think should be done first. How are we going to make sure as a partner that Lincolnshire, certainly the east coast of Lincolnshire, is still protected in the future? And I think that's a massive question at the moment. So I suppose that's my question. We are a partner, but we want to make sure we're not a junior partner who loses out in the end.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I bring you in, Sue, I'd just like to say that all three from the Fens, Lincolnshire and the Humber Estuary have all faced similar situations, which is funding. The strategies are there and the programs are brilliant and they are being put together. But like you say, first you've got to secure the funding equally across all three programs, and then you've got to implicate it as well. So if you want to respond to that, Sue, please, if you can.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Hill. So just to reassure you, as the three projects across the Fens East Coast and the Humber, we are working really closely together, and we've also set up an internal working group for other major strategic projects internally, because what we don't want to do is the first strategic project that goes to government secures some money and there's none left for any of the others. So we want to try and take those collectively to government, and we're working on that at the moment in terms of the best way to do that, because there are multiple government departments involved in this. In terms of when will some of this information be ready, as I said, over the next kind of 12 months, we're going to be doing that prioritisation of the key assets in terms of at greatest risk of failure to be able to make that investment. So once we've got that prioritised package of works, we will be able to go in and secure, seek to secure funding to start to deliver that work. But as I said, we've got an existing strategy and we haven't stopped delivering. Since 2008, we've delivered over £170 million worth of investment in Greater Lincolnshire itself. It's obviously greater numbers across the Humber as a whole, but we've also been very successful on the Humber of securing private investment before partnership funding even existed. We've secured contributions in the past from the likes of Associated British Ports, even if they've been contributions in kind. So we're well versed in trying to think outside the box and think of novel ways to do this. We know it's a significant challenge, and we'll only be able to kind of try and kind of find an optimum way forward if we do that work collectively. As I said, that governance review is going to be critical because we need to look at the art of possible. And as you suggest, one of that might be a case to government, but we need to do that piece of work quite rapidly over the next 12 to 18 months to see where the best way to secure the best way forward would be. But I do accept there will be difficult decisions. And as Councillor Ashton indicated earlier, we're very cognizant that it is depending on the timescales over which you look, that East Coast through to the Humber does become interlinked, as it does down to the Fens. So we're well aware we can't do one in isolation. But if we were to try and merge that into one big project, it would become quite unmanageable to manage on a day-to-day basis. But I do work really closely with those two projects.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. It's interesting. Thank you very much for that. I find it absolutely fascinating. For me, I see the opportunity with this as well as obviously the threat to our current landscape. Funding is obviously mentioned a lot, and it's a major driving issue behind what happens and where this goes. I've been very interested in the past in the general sort of power generation within the UK. And one of the things that's always struck me is we have a huge amount of tidal potential in the UK for creating power. And to me, this actually it jumps out. It says this is an opportunity to look at tidal energy. That estuary is it's got the second largest tidal range in the UK, and that's one of the largest in Europe. We have an opportunity here to actually turn around to government, especially at the moment with people like Mr. Miliband and his focus on renewables. We could easily turn around to them, and I'm just interested to know how what your sort of future focus is. Are we going to try and actually create flooding solutions that actually incorporate power generation and something that can actually create money for the UK in the future? Now, I know the 7 estuary projects are talking about can create 7% of the UK's overall power if they were to use tidal in that estuary. So is that something we're looking at, and is that something that your partners and such like have actually mentioned as options? It's just an interest of mine. Thank you.
So pilots have been carried out in the Humber previously on a small scale for tidal power. One of the challenges for tidal power is how you ensure you can do that in a compatible way with the ports industry as well. As I say, it's not the remit of the Environment Agency per se to do tidal power generation, but working in partnership with others, I say the future optimum solution for this will be a collaboration across the board. Flood risk alone probably will not deliver the optimum solution for a prosperous future on the Humber, but there are huge opportunities out there.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments? Councillor Sneath.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the report. Really well written. I think Councillor Hill asked nearly all my questions, which is also, I'm pleased to see that you are looking at alternative funding models to try and bring some money into the area. I just want to make sure, how will the programme ensure a balance between the community protection, economic activity and the environmental impact? And I'd also want to know is how soon are we looking at this public consultation, please? Thank you.
So in terms of public consultation, I think we're probably a little way away. As some of the conversations have indicated, there will be some difficult decisions to make, and so we need to do some work collectively as a partnership to understand what those could be before we kind of go to public consultation. So we could look at the art of the possible. It will be a balance between communities, economics and the environment. And yeah, I can't answer that at the moment, but they will all be considered. They will all be part of what ultimately we decide we need to do. The whole point of what we're trying to do is take an adaptive approach. We don't want to make decisions now that we don't need to take. We don't know all the answers, but we want to kind of be able to set a strategic direction so people have got confidence, people can still invest in the area, and people know the direction we're aiming for.
Thank you again, Sue. Matthew?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And just reflecting on the comments that have been made by members in the chamber today, it's just to say that I'm the nominated officer representative on the Humber 2100 programme for Lincs County Council. So if anybody has any thoughts or comments that they wish to feed back to me, which I can then take forward into these workshops and groups, do please feed them back. And obviously I'll make sure that Lincolnshire County Council's voice is heard within that partnership environment. So just that request. Thank you.
Well, that's lovely, thank you. Do any of our East or West Lindsays like to add to that at all? No? You're happy? Do we have any other questions or comments? None? Right, well, that concludes this discussion on the item. I'd like to propose that the committee acknowledges and supports the work undertaken across the Humber 21 programme and recommends that the Executive Councillor for the Environment and the Executive Director of Place continue the work associated partners to develop A, the strategic options for the estuary, and B, the future governance arrangements to take this programme forwards. And any additional comments, recommendations and actions be noted for consideration. Please raise your hands if you agree. Thank you. That completes the item. Item 6, environmental policy. This pre-decision scrutiny report can be found on pages 23 to 44 of the agenda pack. This report invites the committee to consider a new environmental policy prior to a decision by the executive on the 3rd of March 2026. The views of the scrutiny committee will be reported to the executive as part of their consideration on the item. The action required by the committee considers the report presented and determines whether it supports recommendations to the executive as set out on pages 23 of the report, and that the committee agrees any additional comments be passed on to the executive in relation to this item. This report will be presented by Chris Miller, but firstly it'll be introduced by Councillor Danny Brooks, the Executive for the Environment. Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to be able to introduce this new environment policy to this scrutiny committee. Whilst the previous Green Master Plan has been a strong model for delivery of environmentally focused work, the previous policy was due for review, and as such, this administration has felt that it is time to update the policy to reflect the change in that position. Chiefly, we do not recognise the need to pursue a policy of carbon neutrality by 2050 at such a pace, without a funding strategy for the authorities to ensure there is no further burden to local council taxpayers. Whilst it is clear the climate is changing, we do not believe that the influences of man-made carbon outputs in this country is significant enough to warrant the crippling financial effects of the pace of change on households and businesses. We shouldn't have to pay for Whitehall's ambitions that they won't fund. We do recognise the need to manage our energy consumption appropriately to drive down costs for this council, as well as delivering local environments that our residents and visitors can enjoy, while seeking to better protect them from the effects of adverse weather and flooding. You don't protect people by declaring emergencies, you protect them by fixing problems. We are also strongly opposed to the industrialisation of our countryside and agricultural land, and believe that for this county, food security remains a high priority over costly infrastructure projects that will blight our landscapes for years to come. The draft policy that Chris will talk about in a minute will enable us to outline our position whilst working with land managers, other agencies, local communities to deliver environmental improvements across the county, whilst ensuring that our work and actions are delivered in a sensible and cost-effective manner. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. I will allow questions for both Councillor Brooks and Chris once Chris has presented the item. Over to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Brooks, for introducing it and covering a lot of what I'm about to say already, which is handy. So forgive me if there's a little bit of repetition. As Councillor Brooks has intimated, the Green Master Plan, which was the previous policy regarding our environmental work at the County Council, was due for review in this current financial year 25-26. So with the changing administration and the change of viewpoint a little bit, particularly on the net zero commitment, it was felt it was an opportunity to just have a bit of a dive into the previous Green Master Plan and review it and reflect on its position and that position of the new administration. What you'll note, though, is it's not a wholesale change, because there was plenty of really good stuff in the previous Green Master Plan that can roll forward. And principally, the three principles on which the Green Master Plan was built on still hold true now, such as waste nothing and make best use of resources, working collaboratively with our communities and others to improve our opportunities for environmental enhancement, and demonstrating environmental leadership and leaving the environment in a better condition than it was found. So the focus going forward won't be necessarily on that wholesale drive towards carbon neutrality in 2050, but we will be looking at adapting to the obviously changing climate. We'll be ensuring we minimise our waste and making sure that within our council operations, we continue to investigate and undertake opportunities to ensure we are efficient in our energy use and to drive down the cost to the authority. In the water world, we will continue to work with our risk management authority partners, such as the Environment Agency, Internal Drainage Boards and Anglian Water, to improve community resilience to flooding and to deliver on opportunities to better protect residents where possible. We will also work with Anglian Water and Water Resources East and other agencies regarding the issues of water stress in the county, and with the mayoral authority in the Enhanced Water Partnership, whose inaugural meeting is this morning, to ensure that there is enough available water to deliver the growth ambitions across Lincolnshire and the wider Greater Lincolnshire landscape. The other area of the environment we need to look at is the natural environment, and this is where there is a slight change from the Green Master Plan, because a couple of elements of the Environment Act 2021, which came after Green Master Plan, that we need to build into the new policy, such as work on the local nature recovery strategy, which is currently under consultation, but once adopted, we'll move into a delivery phase of trying to improve and reverse the biodiversity decline in the county. And that will then match our biodiversity duty, which was another element of the Environment Act. Finally, and as Councillor Brooks has said, the policy underscores the administration's position on protecting Lincolnshire's landscapes and agriculture from large-scale infrastructure projects. And where government determines that infrastructure will be approved, we will make sure that we secure the maximum community benefits to reduce its impact. The policy itself is, as you will have seen, it's a number of statements about how, as a council, we're going to approach this. That will be underpinned by an action plan that's going to be developed over the next 3 months through the summer period, which we'll bring back to scrutiny once it's complete. But that will then outline the various individual elements of environmental work, such as a local nature recovery strategy, our adaptation strategies, our flooding work, and so on. So it all falls under the same umbrella of the environment policy. Thank you, Chairman. That's the introduction to the report for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you both for the presentation and the introduction. I'd now like to invite members of the committee to ask questions or statements. Do we have any speakers, please? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, the big headline you've got here with this change of policy is the dropping the net zero by 2050 requirement. It's not surprising. It's fully expected, really. I do find it a bit disappointing, though, that it's quite negatively. The first sort of sentence or two is quite negative. talking about burdens on taxpayers and such like, it's all national politics. Locally, I can't see how we have any schemes that you're going to have dropped through this policy that's actually going to impact local taxpayers. As I say, I just find that a little bit on the negative side, and it'd be good to actually just stick with local issues rather than going down that national route. So as I say, it'd be interesting to know what schemes you do believe you're dropping, which are local, which are a burden on local taxpayers. So that's the first question for the portfolio holder. The other thing is that on the whole, you do seem to, things like large-scale industrialisation of the county, it's Conservatives' policies from years past. I don't see as much change in this from what's been done with that kind of thing. But something that does stick out for me is a big change recently is changing to housing. We have a lot more houses destined for Lincolnshire due to changes to the National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF. And I think it would be good if we, with our policy, we highlighted the risk to the county, especially to the county's environment, through having much more housing within the towns and the villages and such like. I know there's a kind of mention of it in there, but it would be really good to have more of a committee centred policy that actually is going to keep an eye on those, the huge growth for housing. I mean, for instance, Grantham is expanding at a rapid rate into the countryside. And as I say, it'd be good if we could build something in there, sort of an environmental statement, one of those statements that are listed, something to do with the NPPF and keeping an eye on making sure that we're not just going to overdevelop areas and lose vast amounts of countryside, in the years to come. Just one second. So yes, essentially that would be great if we could look at maybe adding to that list and just say something about the NPPF and housing. That would be great. Thank you.
Councillor Brooks, happy to respond to that?
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the net zero target for 2050, you're right. We are still doing a lot to bring our carbon down to save money for our residents. We're getting rid of the target. So if anything comes up that will cost our residents money, we won't be taking them on unless it's funded by central government. So we're still doing sensible environment policies which save us money and save our residents money. That's the main thing. Thank you.
Chris Miller, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to pick up on a couple of Councillor Martin's points. With regards to individual schemes, we don't have any at the moment that are a burden on the taxpayers. We've always been very careful generally in that regard anyway, but we have made some investments in the past using the development fund as was at the time. But if those councils who were around at the time will recall, we invested in the Salix project, which we part funded, but all that's been repaid back, so that actually had an income to pay off that offset. So we've always been quite careful. I think what we're saying now is that we will continue that as much as anything else. It's not, and it shouldn't inhibit our opportunity to deliver on the existing carbon management plan in its fourth iteration, which this committee had its report back in October in terms of the updates on that, and we will continue to deliver against that where we can, providing it doesn't have that impact on the taxpayers in terms of extra funding needed. It has to be grant led essentially, or have that payback that allows us to invest first and get that payback under a reasonable time frame. The second point you were making regarding housing growth, I mean, obviously it's going to be inevitable that growth will happen across the county and landscapes will be impacted by that. The mechanisms around that, around biodiversity net gain requirements, will hopefully offset a lot of those impacts. But yes, you're quite right. We have to be careful that when we're responding in our development control world and through planning and so on, that we recognise that the environment will be impacted and what can be done to mitigate that, the growth that is going to be required across the county. So there may be some tweaks that could be made into the thing, but obviously that will be up to the executive when they receive the report with the recommendations of this committee.
Lovely, thank you. Do we, Councillor Baxter?
Thank you. You won't be surprised that I think that this is a backward step. I think it's the wrong direction. I think that as a planet, we are facing an existential crisis from climate change, and we shouldn't be afraid to confront that, even if people prefer to side with the 1 or maybe 1.5% of scientists in the world that don't believe in the impact of man-made climate change, then this is still going backwards. We seem on page 34 and 35 to be trying to encapsulate our environmental policies into a few nutshells, but the proof will be in the pudding. And to me, without insulting Councillor Brooks or any of the officers involved, a lot of this stuff is pretty vacuous. If you look at travel, it says we recognise the impact our travel choices have on the environment, obviously, and the changes faced by it. So, yeah, we will seek opportunities to avoid congestion and unnecessary journeys with thoughtful solutions and options. How does that reconcile with the apparent policy of certainly the mayor and possibly others about working from home? Because there are, I mean, a lot of the congestion is caused by people coming into a workplace where they are disturbed by colleagues and have all the kind of things that go with the stress of getting in and out of work. So surely working from home, I'm not saying that people should work from home. I think that, but I think there is a case for some people working from home on some occasions, and this appears to agree with it. So I'd enjoy a comment on that. In terms of resource use, I think the previous iteration, the Green Master Plan, talked about improving energy efficiency in council operations. Are we still committed to putting solar on rooftops on our own buildings and other buildings where available and where sensible? What is our stance on battery storage from solar installations? So where we have solar on roof, are we pro or anti the use of battery storage systems where they are likely to have a massive reduction in the costs of energy procurement in this field? I find it interesting that the inaugural statement on water, or the inaugural water board, it clashes with this committee. It just shows a lack of joined up thinking between that authority and this one. But generally speaking, I am a climate change believer, and I think although we don't have the resources from national government, they're not funding us to achieve net zero. It still is the right thing to do. And even though we don't have the resources to achieve it, if we're not going to say that we're going to hit net zero by 2050, we still should be saying with clear targets, of which there are none in this report, how we are going to become a less carbon intensive authority. It's the right thing. If we don't want the Fens and large parts of Lincolnshire to be flooded in the foreseeable future, then we need to be taking action now because it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Would either of you like to respond to any of those points? Councillor Brooks, Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Like I say, targets don't mean that we're not doing stuff, because we are. And like the previous Green Master Plan had a lot of good in it, and we are continuing with that good work. We want to bring down the costs of our residents. If we set a target that is going to cost our residents money, what's the point of that when all our residents are broke and can't afford to do anything? So we won't take money out of people's pockets unless we have to. Thank you.
Chris, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bass, for those comments. Yeah, I think the element around the travel element and the working from home, we don't have a policy of not working from home, should I say, at the County Council at present. And we factor that in when we're looking at the Scope 3 emissions during the carbon management plan. So we measure that so we can see what the impacts would be potentially, and we can work to that where we can. And I think the element around, are we going to continue to look at driving down our efficiency and sorry, driving efficiency and driving down cost. Regarding energy, yes, absolutely, and that's in the policy. So, we continue to work with our property colleagues. We've identified the top 20, least energy efficient buildings, and what, setting out plans about how we can reverse that through, seeking grants and so on, and utilising any potential income still remaining from the previous SALIC schemes as well to reinvest in that. So yes, it's the answer. We will continue to do that.
Does that satisfy all your points, Councillor Baxter?
So just thank you for letting me come back. Just for clarity, this council does not have any policy on working from home, and this council is not opposed in principle to battery storage systems.
Councillor Brooks.
Yeah, working from home, there's got to be a balance. You've got to have a balance of some people. It's better that they were working from home because it's a massive county. So there is no policy on it, but we're not making a policy saying everybody's got to come back into the office. It's as simple as that. Regarding battery storage, we don't want battery storage on farmland or green fields. If somebody's put some solar panels on their roof and they've got battery storage in their garage, that's fine by us, but we don't want them on our green and pleasant land.
So battery storage as a means of cost reduction for the county council and its own portfolio, there's no problem with that.
We would look at all cost reduction avenues, so that's what we'd be looking at if that's what we needed.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Yeah, just for information, council does have a policy on working from home, and from memory, currently it is a minimum of 2 days a week. Employees are expected to be in a minimum of 2 days a week, potentially 3 days a week. And I think in terms of officer, that is potentially going up to 3. So there is a hybrid policy in at the moment. And obviously, if somebody speaks to the HR department, they will tell you what. So there is a policy, which I think is a pragmatic way. And I think, as Councillor Baxter says, you don't want people never coming in. On the other side, is it really necessary to have everybody coming in every day? It's just not necessary. So I'll just agree with Councillor Baxter. I suppose my concern is with the demise of the Green Master Plan, and there's talk of an action plan, but where are the targets? And I appreciate what Councillor Brooks has said. If you religiously stick to a target, there could be consequences. But if there's no target, and for example, I'll give 2 specific examples. Are we in future going to have no targets for carbon reduction? Are we in future going to have no targets for the number of trees planted? Currently, the council has a policy set in 2021 for 1 tree for every resident, 750,000 trees. We are slowly getting there, probably too slowly for my liking, but you'll see from the Green Master Plan we're getting there. So are we just going to get rid of all that? And Councillor Brooks said, well, we're doing it, but how will we know we're doing it? And if you don't have some sort of target, how do you know you're doing? And I think there is obviously a trade-off. And I think in the past, this council's taken a very pragmatic situation. We've reduced our carbon emissions by nearly 50%, I believe. I can't think there's any extra cost. In fact, we've been in a sweet place where we've reduced carbon emissions, at the same time reduced costs. I think the switching off the street lights at night is a classic example where not only did it reduce a lot of carbon emissions, at the same time it's probably saving this council £3 million a year. So you get the best of both worlds. So I think there is never a binary choice, and I suppose I'm pleased in the sense that really, as it says in the report, not much is changing really. We could have a long debate about whether 2050 is achievable net zero. Personally, I'm a great fan of nature being able to recover itself, but also the ingenuity of humankind. It might be possible, and I think it's probably a mistake to say it's impossible. Who knows? In the way technology is moving forward, we don't know. But I think apart from that sort of bold statement, there isn't much in here which is changing, apart from being a bit more vague about what's exactly going to happen. And if you remember, this council has never declared a climate emergency. This council has never signed up to net zero by 2030 for the council, because they were impossible targets. And I actually don't like the fact that some councils have declared climate emergencies and then just carried on as they were going before. So I think we tried to be honest with everybody, and I certainly agree with Councillor Brooks that we need to get to a good place, but it shouldn't be at a cost. And at the moment, I think Mr. Miliband would say we're global leaders in net zero. No, we're global leaders in self-harm, actually, because we are crucifying a lot of our industry and our jobs by some stupid target which he thinks he can reach in 2030, which is impossible. So overall, I think I'd like some reassurance that there will be some sort of measurement so that Scrutiny and the public can see how this council's doing in terms of getting to a better place. I think probably we need, in terms of protecting the environment, and I think we all agreed with that it is essential that we try and protect our beautiful county. The previous council did give the ability for the executive to spend money on challenging certain projects which are, for example, pylons, actually legally challenging. So I do wonder, as part of this as well, there is no mention of money and finance, but as part of this as well, there needs to be some acknowledgement that, again, the council will need to put the money where its mouth is, which I fully support, and I'm sure the executive do, to say that when the time comes, that we will be spend a lot of money maybe in terms of trying to defend our council from doing that. So I'd like to see some more how the targets will be, or are there going to be any targets? Secondly, one would hope this would go to the full council, because our county is really important. So hopefully it won't just go to the executive, and the council will also, because I think all 70 of us need to have a view on this. I think we mostly agree, actually. I don't think there's massive disagreement really in terms of where we are. I think everybody agrees that the climate is changing. I think there is some disagreement as to why that's happening, and that's probably more the argument. But, all in all, not much change, but I think what bits of change there are probably not for the better.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll bring in Chris first, and then Councillor Brooks afterwards, if Chris don't cover it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Hill. That target element is you'll probably find that they're more built into the individual action plan strategies that fall below the overarching policy. So, for example, the targets within carbon management plan, which are still there, the tree planting strategy and the woodland creation strategy is where we'll find those targets around the 750,000. So, whilst not overt in the policy, they will sit in the action plan, which we'll be bringing back to this scrutiny when we finalised how that then sits within the new sort of environment policy. So we should be able to see those going forward. The question around where this policy will be determined, the advice from legal services was, because the environment policy does not sit within the policy framework of the authority, it's a decision that's taken by executive rather than full council. But I can go back to Will Bell just to clarify that, but that was the advice we were initially given.
Yeah, just if I could come back. I mean, I think, yes, technically the executive makes a decision, but I think certain things, and I think the environment policy and the future of this county is something, even if it's the council are endorsing what I would hope that at a future full council that could be thought about. So personally, I don't know whether you agree, Chairman, that we could look at that. So at least the other 60 odd councillors can have ownership of it as well.
Well, all the comments will be captured by the scrutiny officers. I'm sure it'll all go forward for consideration, whatever we say. Councillor Brooks, did you want to respond? Oh, Chris has covered it, yeah. Does that satisfy you, Councillor Hill?
I don't know what the rest of the committee feel, but I just feel there are certain things that the full council at least have ownership of, and we can all be there, and there may be others who are not on this committee who have some very valuable contributions to make. But I just put it to the committee really that hopefully they would think that's a sensible way forward. I mean, we can put on the whatever we like on the council, you know, we don't need officers to give us permission, do we?
Thank you. Do we, Councillor Martin?
Just a quick one for clarity, really. The mayor last week said that Reform UK has a commitment to end working from home culture. I wondered if Councillor Brooks could actually give some peace of mind to our employees and just tell us whether that is a policy that you're going to be pushing forward for the rest of your term in office. Because obviously the employees will be slightly worried that they're hearing different things from different people. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Martin. At present, we won't be pushing for everyone to come back into the office. It would cost us too much money. Thank you.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. Just wanted to say thank you for this. I think it's very clear to our residents about the net zero and saying to them, look, it's unachievable. It's going to cost us massive amounts of money. It's going to affect my generation massively with the cost, if not billions, it's going to be trillions. It's going to cost us in the future. So it's great that the council is saying, look, we're only doing these projects if they're actually saving people money. That's what people care about. They don't care about all this technology that's going to need to be replaced in 10 years. So yeah, I'm just wanted to say thank you very much for this clear statement from the Lincolnshire Council that we're against these net zero projects that are going to cost our residents thousands.
Do you have any more questions, comments? Statements? No? Well, thank you. This now concludes the discussion on the item. I'd like to move that the committee supports the recommendations to the committee as detailed on page 23 of the report, and that the committee's comments, suggestions, and recommendations these are captured by that have been captured by the scrutiny officer are shared with the executive for consideration. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Carried, thank you.
Chair, could I ask that my lack of my vote against is clearly put down in writing, in bold, underlined.
Bold, underlined. Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Right, well, that is agreed. So item 7, service level performance report in against the performance framework 25 to 26 as Q3. This performance report is on pages 45 to 52 of the agenda pack. This report seeks to provide committee members with a summary of the performance of the environment services of Q3. The actions required by the committee and comments of the scrutiny committee, service level performance as of Q3. This report will be presented by Chris Yorkson, Head of Waste, and Chris Miller, Head of Environment. Either or, Chris, please.
I'll beat you to it, Chris. I'll go first. I'll do waste. Thank you, Chair. So I'll summarise the key performance indicators for waste services for Q3. So the first KPI of waste collected per household, the Q3 target is to be below 780 kilograms per household, and for the full year is to be below 1,000 kilograms per household. This is a level that is based on national best practice. At Q3, we're at 696. This is good news, as waste prevention is the highest objective of the waste hierarchy. This means that overall less waste is being produced per household, which results in less haulage and processing. The second KPI is the county's overall recycling rate, with the target following national guidance currently at 55%. At Q3, we are at 42.31, which is below target, but it's higher than last year in the same quarter, which was 36.3. The end of year forecast is 43.44 currently. However, this is calculated using the current quarter and the previous 3 quarters. And in Q4 of 24-25, our recycling rate in that quarter was particularly low, around 36%. So that will affect the current forecast. However, looking towards the future and through the Lincolnshire Waste Partnership, we're rapidly progressing with the government's simpler recycling initiatives, with the introduction of food waste collections across Lincolnshire planned for this year. From the food waste that we anticipate to capture and divert from incineration, we're anticipating increased recycling rates of circa 7%. The third KPI is the recycling rate at our county recycling centres. The target is to be above 75%. At Q3, we're at 65.5, which is the same as last year for Q3. This is below target, but is usually expected as green waste volumes fall off after summer as we enter the winter months. The forecast for the end of the year is 70.49%, which is below target, but when benchmarked nationally, still indicates a high performance level for recycling centres. The last KPI is for waste sent to landfill. At Q3, we are below the target at 0.53%. With the forecast at 0.71 for the end of the year. We have so far continued to work hard with our supply chain to find alternatives to landfill wherever possible during the outages of our energy from waste facility. However, when capacity cannot be sourced, landfill is the last resort. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your time. Happy to take any questions.
Are you happy for Chris Hill to take questions first? Do we have any questions for Chris regarding the waste?
I mean, actually, my view, and people who've been there before know, are actually recycling rates about 98%. Because if you count the energy from waste plant, which recycles black bin rubbish or whatever it is, that is actually a form of recycling because it turns rubbish into electricity. So my personal view, and I know you're looking at practical and non-cost ways of reducing stuff, we are already recycling nearly all of our waste in one form or the other. So I've never really agreed with this government target of the 40 or 50%, which they come up with, because it ignores the energy from waste situation. I'll just make a comment about that, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. It all looks good. The only slight query I have is there's a statement in there that says, following food waste, there is a requirement to collect plastic bags and wrapping for recycling from April 2027. Obviously, as people's gardens are filling up with bins and there's lots of sort of kickback, if you like, from the amount of bins people have got. Could you just clarify if you've got any ideas what that might involve? Thank you.
Yes, yeah, great question. Thank you. So yeah, food waste has been the big focus for us for the last sort of 24 months really, but soft plastics or plastic bags and wrapping is the next thing the Lincolnshire Waste Partnership is going to look to address, because we have got a target of April 2027 to introduce that. Nationally, there's trials going on in lots of different areas, and the method there is bags within a bag within your existing recycling bin. That seems to be the preferable method that the materials recycling facilities can accept it. It's all about how they've managed to pick it off the picket line, because it's quite a manually intensive process at the moment. There's one materials recycling facility in the country that can accept it commingled, so it's completely all just put in loose, but that technology is quite new and it hasn't advanced too far yet. We're anticipating potentially in the next sort of 4 to 5 years that the technology will catch up and there could be a potential commingling of that waste. But at the minute, yeah, the focus is on how we're going to do it as a partnership, what will be the most effective method. So we're looking at all the current studies that have been done across the country, and we'll try and get the best method. But at this stage, it doesn't look like it will be an additional bin. It will be within the facilities that we've already got.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. I'll start by disagreeing with my colleague, Councillor Hill. I can't disagree with anybody from the other side of the chamber, because they haven't said anything about this yet. But yeah, Councillor Hill, I'd refer to the diagram. inverted triangle on page 46, which clearly points to a difference between recycling and recovery. If you've got 10 tons of steel cans, it's always going to be better to recycle it rather than burn it, generating some electricity and loads of heat that gets chucked out of the chimney and thrown away. It's always been the case with the so-called energy recovery that it recovers some electricity, but the heat just gets chucked into the environment to add to the changing climate. On the waste performance, I'm trying to look back for the equivalent figures for last year. It looks from the figures in paragraph 1.1.2, PI 161, that it's on a trajectory to exceed the 1,000. If we've got it's very small numbers, but 280 in the first quarter, 560 in the second quarter, 780 in the fourth quarter, then are you, I can't remember who introduced it, are we expecting it to be less than the target of 1,000 by the end of the year? That's question one. I don't know if you want to pick that up.
Yes, we are at the moment. We generally find some of the waste volumes in the last quarter after the Christmas peak drop off, because it's particularly around garden waste, which is quite a dense and heavy material. That's generally less in the winter months. So yeah, the trajectory often dips as we get towards the end of the year.
Thank you for that. That makes sense, and let's hope so. In the second one, the PI 160 recycling rate, did you say that it's gone up from 36.3 to 43.44? Because that's phenomenal. That's really good news, isn't it?
Yes, I have. Yes. So yeah, in the previous quarter of the same period, it was 36.3, and in this one we're at 42.31. So there's a couple of factors there that's influenced that. We are having a stronger return on paper and card. I think that might be the early green shoots of the extended producer responsibility legislation, which is moving a lot of waste from your difficult to recycle materials into the paper and card stream. And I think you can all see that when you're at the local supermarkets now, how many products are turning to paper and card. The other thing is that also this year was particularly dry and hot summer, which then has a impact on our residual waste. Effectively it dries it out, so we're transporting or processing less moisture, less water, so the residual tonnages of the general waste slightly falls, and then it has that impact where it then affects the overall recycling rates.
Thanks. That also makes a lot of sense. And the first bit is great news. The second bit is talking about that's a bit of a windfall, isn't it? But nevertheless, if it makes the figures look better, then great. And it's heading in the right direction. 36 up to 43, very welcome. The waste at the next one, PI 76, waste at household waste recycling centres. I think there are many people in the county that get frustrated at arriving at so-called recycling centres and finding stuff isn't being recycled, and there's nothing more frustrating than saving up all your materials, whatever kind of material it is, and then being told, oh, that skip is full, just chuck it in the general waste, when it will go off to Martin's recycling recovery facility. So yeah, if there's a way to put pressure on the operators to be a bit sharper about turning around the skips, especially given that some of the centres are shut for 1 or 2 days a week in order that they can keep up with the demand, then that would be welcome, because it is really frustrating. In page 49 under 1.1.4, I think I could probably find some people in Lincolnshire that would argue with the naming of simpler recycling, as we get more and more bins outside. I mean, I'm again, you'd expect nothing else. I'm a believer in better recycling and more effective recycling, which I think it is, and including the food waste. It's, as far as I'm concerned, welcome that we're taking this out of the recovery and landfill stream, but simpler. I wouldn't want to stand in front of that. I think it's much better. So yeah, it seems to be heading in the right direction. So very welcome.
I've got to concur with you. I think with the recycling, it's more of an education thing. When you introduce something new for people to recycle, it takes time to build up. And now with the introduction of the food waste, I think people will recycle more because they're not chucking the food with that recyclable material. So I do believe that it will increase, the recycling rate will increase dramatically. I really do. And the more you introduce systems of you breaking that down to make it easier for people to recycle things, I think the better it'll work. But did you want to come in on that, Chris, or not?
Yeah, happy just to add that through the Lincolnshire Waste Partnership, I think we've been really organised and proactive to pull some of our resources through a strategic communications campaign that we are delivering. And then hopefully you might have seen there's a lot of messaging going out on social media, on the radio, targeted different web campaigns, and it's really key, isn't it, to educating people around behaviour change and getting that message across. Why we're trying to do this and how it's got a benefit for Lincolnshire and the county. So, yeah.
Councillor Sneath.
Thank you, Chairman, and don't worry, Councillor Baxter. We are here to ask some questions. I think you've covered a few of them within those 4 or 5 questions or statements you've made forward. So my last one will be, are all Lincolnshire district councils on track for the April 2026 food waste collection rollout? Thank you.
No. So we've got 4 districts that will be going in April. We've got West Lindsey, City of Lincoln, North Kesteven and South Kesteven. They'll be going first. And then East Lindsey, Boston Borough, South Holland will be going second in about October, November time. Currently is planned. The reason for that is because of the availability of vehicles. All of a sudden, this legislation's come in. Everybody's moving fairly quickly. Everyone's entering the market. There's only a couple of suppliers for these vehicles. The 4 districts are going earlier, got their orders in quick, secured a production slot, and have got them available to them to utilise. The other 3 councils have got a slightly later production slot, and hence that's why their start date is going to be a little bit later.
Can I just come back on, Mr. Chairman? Can we be assured that they haven't increased the price of those vehicles then as they would demand, or have we, as the council, decided we will take them when they are ready at the same price or similar price to the other councils that got there sooner?
I can't really comment on that because that is the districts, as a waste collection authority, it's for them to secure their contracts. I do know that the districts have got vehicles that are optimised for their rounds and their collection. So some districts may have got a different vehicle or different type of vehicle, or different supplier, depending on how they operate their facility.
Thank you for that. I just didn't want people to take advantage of this deadline of the districts. But thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
No, thank you very much. Councillor Hill.
Just to give some, agree with you, Chair, reassurance, our village was part of a trial for food waste some years ago. It was very popular, and when South Kesteven unfortunately cancelled the trial, it didn't go down very well. So just to give reassurance that it is popular and people really get into it, and it's good, even though it is an extra bin, it's not a large bin. And I don't want to continue the argument too long with Councillor Baxter, but just to point out that recycling is not a carbon neutral or a cost neutral activity. And I think the issue is, if you are actually spending a lot of money transporting and processing something which has no value at the end, then the question obviously becomes, well, just stick it in the incinerator and turn it into electricity. So it's not as simple as it first would appear. I'll leave it there because otherwise this argument could go on for some time.
I'll just remind members that Chris Miller will be coming in on the environment side of this as the second part of this item. And after we've done with Chris, we will be taking a short comfort break. But in the meantime, we should move on. Councillor Baxter.
Yes, I resist the temptation to come back to Councillor Hill again, but you said slightly delayed. I mean, thank you to Councillor Sneath for pointing out what the government should have seen from miles away, that if you tell the entire country to do a thing and to do that thing all at the same time, then the then the free market is going to make a load of money out of it by putting the prices up of the vehicles that you need, and absolutely crackers. And they've done it with its insulation, they've done it with other things, and well done to those authorities that went forward. And again, one of the reasons why South Kesteven, before my time, or under a previous administration, one of the reasons why the food waste recycling didn't continue is because district councils were promised money, new burdens funding for new vehicles, which apparently has arrived, and you can't see where it is, but we're told has now arrived. But that's what put it off. My question was going to be: you said at a later date or slightly later for those other authorities. What do you mean by slightly later? Can you put some rough date on it?
We're looking at October, November time for that all the three authorities to go live. That's the current plan date. We're working with those different districts. We're ready at the majority of our transfer stations. We've got building works going at the ones for later programme down the line. So yeah, at the moment we're coordinated, and those plans have been put forward to DEFRA for them to understand the timescales that we're working to, and we've had no adverse kickback from them.
Councillor Bailey Robinson.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether it was mentioned before, but just regarding the recycling and the household waste recycling centres, is there any centres in particular that are sort of driving this performance dip? And if so, what are the interventions that we're planning?
So yeah, we generally find as we move into the winter period that the recycling rate will drop off, and that is heavily influenced by green waste because it is such a heavy material. But we're looking at lots of different things at the recycling centres at the minute around reuse, because I think that's a significant opportunity to increase the recycling rates, because you can include reuse within that. So we've introduced the reuse shop at Tattershall. That's been absolutely fantastic, and my figures at the moment are, since the introduction of that, we've got 81 tonnes of waste that would have been either sent for to be broken down to be recycled or for incineration, has now been back to reuse. We've now put the community repaints at all the recycling facilities, and again, that's since they've been introduced, 35,000 litres of paint that would have been incinerated has gone to be reused by the community groups and our customers. But we're looking at other opportunities we can do, because I think a lot of this is it's marginal gains of doing lots of small different things that will then make up to something bigger. So we're looking at different things we can do with wood. We're looking at potentially like a wood recycling facility on sites. We've been out to community groups and charities and asking them, is there something we can do on our sites? Do you want a certain type of material? We can put it aside for you and you take it away. And so currently we've got, off the top of my head, I think we've got 5 community groups and charities that are now on some of our facilities, and we've been talking to another 20 that are looking. So that's something we're really trying to improve to try and increase our recycling rates at our facilities.
Just make a comment to that. Yeah, I went to the Louth recycling centre the other day, and there's quite a few people around the paint recycling centre as well. So it is quite popular. I had a look in there, but there wasn't any turquoise blue paint in there, unfortunately. So didn't quite get what I wanted. But maybe look next time. But yeah, thank you very much for that, and good to see what we're doing in the future.
Thank you for that. I think that just about finished off. Yeah, there's no more for you, Chris, I think, but thank you very much anyway. I would like to comment on the paint. Did you have any idea how amazingly successful that paint was going to go with them sort of figures?
I think we always thought it would go down well. We've talked to other authorities who have introduced it, but yeah, I think it's gone better than we expected. And I think sometimes with these projects, when you see that level of success, it gives my team ambition to want to do more and more. And I think we've got an ambitious team, as the projects we talked about, is that we want to try and continue that success further.
Well done again, thank you. So we'll now move over to does somebody give him a nudge? Chris Miller, Head of Environment.
Thank you, Chairman. It become obvious why I let Chris go first, because I only have the one measure to report on, and that's the percentage of Section 19 investigations, the flood investigations completed within the 6 months of being begun. The target's 90%, and we've maxed out at 100%. So we have no outstanding cases that are over 6 months old. As Councillor Brooks mentioned this morning, the 3 that we have in hand at the minute are ongoing. They will be resolved within that 6 month period as well. So we will hopefully continue that 100% trend across into the next reporting period. Let's hope it doesn't rain significantly, because obviously that does have an effect on the figures.
Any questions, comments? Councillor Martin.
Just a quick one. Are there any main issues which are delaying progress on the S19 report recommendations? Is there anything specific?
Nothing particular. We have a quarterly review period with all of our partner organisations where recommendations have been made to seek updates and what's happening. With other partners, such as, for example, the Environment Agency or Anglian Water, recommendations may be influenced by their budgets or programming schedules as to when things can be undertaken, but we keep up to date with that. From Lincolnshire County Council's point of view, we work as a team very closely with our highways colleagues, and there's a lot of proactive work going on at the moment following the recommendations that have been made with working with the highways drainage team, and work that we're also doing within the floods and water team ourselves. Some of the recommendations are, if I say simply, it's engagement, in that it's talking to people about property flood resilience measures, or trying to engage with riparian landowners and educate and advise as well. So it isn't always about physical intervention. Some of this is about the education and sort of promotion of what other people need to do and need to consider as well. Of course, we do just need to remember that under the Flood and Water Management Act, we haven't actually got the powers to compel people to do things, but we do have that strong partnership network where we try and encourage and influence wherever we can.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Yes, good news, and you know, it's good that these reports have been finished. I'm very pleased in the budget we'll be debating a week today that Councillor Brooks has managed to get some more money in to carry on the good work. And could I also thank him for it, because I know he's been around the county, certainly been to my patch to look at various flooding issues. Of course, this is only the first step, because all the Section 19 does is tell you what the consultants think is the problem. The next bigger step is solving the problem. So I wonder, in terms of future targets, bearing in mind accepting a lot of this is different partners are involved, I suppose a more interesting target moving forward is how many of these issues have been solved. So I don't know whether there is any plans to have a target of that sort, to say, well, there was flooding in X village and the partners came together and now there is no flooding. So I just wonder how, as a scrutiny committee, we can measure how, as lead flood authority, we're making sure these problems are solved. So I've just asked that question. Is there a thought how we can do that?
Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Hill. Yeah, it's actually in a different reporting period. I think we report on it in Q4. We report on the number of houses better protected over the financial year. So it goes into those schemes that we've been able to deliver against those Section 19s with our local partners as well. So we can give an overview over a year's period. So it does come up, I think, in Q4.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. Although it's a fairly simple graph, it is at the front of many people's minds. When you look nationally, at this moment, there are 74 flood, I think they call it flood is imminent, flood warnings, 74 flood warnings and 145 flood alerts. So people on every river across Lincolnshire are probably looking out the windows and worrying. But if Henk and Babette have done anything for us, it is improve the way that we deal with our partners, that we deal with the situations, and got to express my thanks to Mr. Harrison and the people around him for we're in a much better situation in dealing with flooding than we were the day before Babette and the day before Henk. And I think communities are more resilient, communities are more aware, but still, as my grandmother used to say, flood and fire are faithful servants but terrible masters. And so on the actual and the target against the performance indicator, yeah, it's great that we've not got any within the outside of the 6 month period. That's a lot easier to achieve when you've only got the small tens or single figures of numbers of inquiries to be carried out. If you get 800 overnight, then that kind of puts this graph out the window. I don't know how graphically you would represent the absolute number of investigations completed. I know they're tucked into the text above, but if there was a way to show that there is less flooding or more, that might be helpful, but that's for the statisticians to work out. Thank you.
Just on the top of that, you know, the flood resilience grants, would you say that would that has been utilised? Do you get any feedback from the people that's received them grants? How it's made, you made an impact on them from the purpose of it?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So we are sending forms out to engage with people once they've took us up on the property flood resilience grants to see how what their experience was of working with us and the system, but also then we can monitor to see if properties have been impacted, if there is any future flooding events in those areas. So the only thing I would say with the property flood resilience grant to bear in mind, it isn't dealing with flooding at source. It is only trying to help mitigate the impact to people of their homes. So, but if those property flood resilience measures are effective, if a flood was to happen in those locations again, hopefully we wouldn't see the number of properties coming forward in the Section 19 investigation because internal flooding has been prevented, which is obviously what the purpose of all that is about.
Thank you. Councillor Sneath, then you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we can all join Councillor Baxter in the thanks regarding the response to Storm Babette and Hank. And carrying on the theme from Councillor Hill about money, as a councillor who sits on South Holland Inland Drainage Board in my ward, can you please confirm how the council is going to support IDBs facing financial strain from the energy and maintenance costs? Thank you.
It is something that we're very much mindful of, and there has been presentations at this committee previously from our internal drainage board colleagues. It's not something that we've got a direct influence over. I am aware through working with drainage board colleagues that questions are being put to government and questions are being asked, and I know it's crippling for some internal drainage boards, the electricity costs, and certainly with the extent of flooding that was experienced with Babette and Henk and the amount of pumping that had to be done, and in some cases pumping stations that were lost by being inundated with water, had a huge impact on drainage boards. It's very much something that we're aware of. If we can lend that supporting voice to their ask, we will of course do, but I know through the National Body Association of Drainage Authorities they are very much pushing that as a priority for the internal drainage board sector and trying to have their voice heard.
Wonderful, thank you so much.
Okay, Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, thank you for letting me come back. The flood resilience grants, I think the original budget for that or available funds for that was at £1 million. Can you tell me how much of that has gone?
At the moment, the actual money spent is around about the £400,000 mark, just shy of £400,000 spent and allocated to people. We are moving on to phase 3 and 4 of the programme with the anticipation that all being well, the majority, if not all of that money will be spent by March 2027 or allocated to people who have shown interest. The initial allocation was for people that had been impacted in the January 2025 flooding, which has been our focus. We obviously can't force people to take up the grant, and we didn't have quite the uptake that we would have maybe hoped. But of course, there's been numerous flooding instances across the county. So where people haven't took up or had the opportunity to take up grant before where there's been impacts, we've made sure that we have directly reached out to those people to try and encourage them to take up the property flood resilience measures. And it's through that phased approach that we're hopeful that we will be able to utilise the £4 million. But it is ongoing at the moment, obviously.
Thank you for that. Do we have any more speakers, questions, comments? No? Thank you very much. This now concludes the discussion on the item. I'd like to propose that the committee is satisfied with the contents of the report and has assured service level performance 25-26 as of Q3, and any additional comments will be noted. Please raise your hand if you agree. Thank you. This concludes this item. We'll now take a short comfort break. We do have 2 other items remaining, but we'll take a short comfort break, 10 minutes, get a coffee, Just give you all a minute or two just to regroup, please. Thank you. Can you all take your seats, please? Thank you. Thank you all for that. Item 8 of the agenda, Lincolnshire Archaeology Handbook. This report is on pages 53 to 58 of the agenda pack. This report seeks to provide committee members with an update on the Lincolnshire Archaeology Handbook and the role it plays in ensuring the appropriate recording of the county's archaeological heritage through the planning process. Actions required by this committee is to support the production and up-to-date Lincolnshire Archaeology Handbook, and to endorse the use of the handbook through the county planning matters and support officers in promoting its use by local planning authorities and other organisations undertaking works which have an impact upon the archaeological heritage of Lincolnshire. This report will be presented by Graham Appleby, Senior Historic Environment Officer Advice. Over to you, Graham, please, and thank you for being patient.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've got a very short presentation, and if that can be brought up, please. Thank you, Joe. The Archaeological Handbook has been in use by the County Archaeological Service for a number of years now, and it is currently a PDF format, which makes it a bit inaccessible. It's also approximately 200 pages long, containing a lot of technical information, really for archaeologists to use and museum staff. It is also no longer accessible in terms of the way it's presented because of the use of tables and also flow charts. So we've taken the opportunity of getting this onto the website to review the handbook and also to direct people to an awful lot of the technical information which is available elsewhere as online resources. Next slide, please. The work that we do is underpinned by the MPPF, which has already been mentioned today, Chapter 16, and also local plans, where this sets out the requirements that we respond to in terms of consultations, where a development comes through and what's going to be the potential harm or impact on archaeology. So this is the framework, literally, in which we work with. Next slide, please. So there are two paragraphs within the MPPF which we pay particular attention to. Paragraph 207, which is the production of an assessment and also field work where necessary. And paragraph 216, you'll see I've highlighted in blue at the bottom there the word significance. We look at each application and each scheme on its own merit and what the significance of the archaeology or potential archaeology on a site or adjacent to it may be. And it's working that out, which is where we get into a lot of technical information. But the MPPF hasn't emerged overnight out of nothing. It emerged from the previous PPS 5 and before that PPG 16, which was published in 1991. Next slide, please. But there is a long history of heritage and archaeology being embedded in other legislation from the Town and Country Planning Act of 1947 onwards through these measures that you can see on the screen, and also up to more recently the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act of which was passed last year. The technical information now that we work with across the sector, whether we're county archaeologists or we work for an archaeological contracting company, the people you actually see out in the field, is also underpinned by an awful lot of guidance and technical notes. Next slide, please. And also, this is just a representative sample of many hundreds of pages that we need to know about and know where to go to. That means that the advice that we give can become very long-winded in terms of technical competencies and standards of behaviour and practice. And the top document there is the industry one, if in effect from the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists. There are several of these also. So we have an awful lot going on, and what we want to try and do with the handbook online is to reduce the wordage, but also, as I say, to direct people to these resources, because the vast majority of them are now available elsewhere. Next slide, please. So this is the home page of the working model at the moment, the handbook, and this is what you would come to if you wish to look at what we do and the advice we issue. And if you are able to open the website, that would be lovely. Thank you. So this is the working sandbox version, as it's called, and we've divided the handbook into these menu items on the right hand side, from general information down to archives. The archive section is not yet populated with a working model because we are waiting for our museum colleagues to provide that. It's about how to deposit archives in the museum services. But if I was to ask Joe to point the mouse and click on archaeological contractors, thank you. And if you scroll down, you'll see there are a series of number of sub-menus and sub-headings. And this really condenses an awful lot of what we do in terms of the daily workflow, but also the advice that we issue. If you go back up, please, back to the home page. And then if I click on, or ask Joe to click on developers and owners, there's a section specifically for people who are coming forward with schemes and applications. And it's really a summary for them to say, here is the information, contact us, speak to your heritage consultants or your planning agents, etc. Because there's an awful lot here to take on board. And you can see there's a link within that also to the National Planning Policy Framework. That's currently out as a redraft for consultation. And so what we also want to do is to make this a dynamic document also, and handbook, and not have to rely on revising a very long PDF. If you can return to the home page, please. And then if you can click on resources. So a lot of what I've shown you in terms of legislation and also guidance and standards and professional practice, they will be able to access this through this particular part of the handbook also. And this is really for the benefit of those archaeologists working out with commercial companies, so they can see where we're coming from in terms of the advice that we provide, the technical direction which we are recommending, but also for the benefit of anybody who wishes to know more information on what we do. As I say, there's a number of hundreds of pages which we are aware of, and we know how to get to that. It also links to other resources such as the Lincolnshire Historic Environment Record, that database which we are now required to actually maintain and keep and make available of the known archaeology and built heritage assets, and also those things which are listed and scheduled within the county. So that brings that information full circle back to the Historic Environment Record in terms of where you go to first, and that's the first thing that's in paragraph 207 of the MPPF. The handbook will therefore be dynamic in terms of being able to update it. We can change things as policy or guidance changes also, whether that's at a national or a local level. Very short presentation, and I hope there's sufficient here and also in the paper to generate interest. And if there are any questions, please do ask them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Councillor Sneath.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought about getting there first, but I think you may have answered my first question, which was how was it going to reduce delays in planning applications? But you've done a wonderful demonstration to show how you can access it. So my other question will be is what enforcement mechanisms exist if archaeological contractors fail to meet the standards in the handbook?
There are two mechanisms. One is the planning route, and there is a condition, generally speaking, where there's a consent in place. And if the standards are not being adhered to an agreed written specification of investigation, as it's referred to, the method statement, then we refer that to our colleagues in enforcement. So there's that route. We also have the route to, if they are a registered organisation with the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists, to report them, and for that institution to then take measures as they see appropriate. I think in my career, that's not happened to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments? Councillor Hill.
Yes, I mean, obviously, I am right in saying that when archaeology is discovered, you don't have to do anything with it as long as you don't disturb it and you can just cover it all up again. Is that correct?
The starting principle is preservation in situ, and one of the purposes of the assessments and the evaluation is to understand significance. If you can design away disturbance, then we will step away from it. We will not excavate or go any further unless necessary. And that's part of the early dialogue, and purposes of the handbook is to help with that dialogue. The sooner we know what we're dealing with, we can come up with a programme which either leads to further excavation, or, as you say, we don't have to actually do anything. It can be left where it is.
So I suppose where I'm coming from, someone has to decide how far you go, because obviously developers, which includes the county council, will actually have to pay for, and as you know, I'm still remember the Eastern Bypass where we hit some a Roman villa, which was very important, but it became quite a costly exercise. So I suppose it's a judgment in terms of not losing the archaeology, but at the same time, developers being clobbered with huge bills while archaeologists crawl over it and have a good time. So there is a balance, and I'm wondering how do you find that balance?
We always seek to achieve the balance by going for what is appropriate and proportionate, both in terms of harm, but also the significance. And it is that question that has, can we step away from it? And if you can avoid something by moving a location of a house or where a substation will be or an attenuation pond, and that's doable within the development phase and design phase, that's where we would seek to achieve that. And that, again, is a conversation because we advise the planning authority and the case officers on that basis. And where that cannot be avoided for whatever the constraints are, whether it's a design one or a site constraint, then we're back to the point that you make, that the developer will be paying to undertake further excavation and work on that site.
I can tell you a little story, Councillor Hill. I've experienced it myself. Basically, it was a site with archaeological interest, and I had to scrape it off millimetre by millimetre with the archaeologist observing it, and then we had to position all the piles, structural piles for the building, around the Roman remains. And there was colour sheeted and mapped, so they're still there under the building, untouched. But we had to design the building so we didn't disturb the Roman remains. And I think it's fantastic that builders can do that. You know, these developers can retain them but cover them up, so they're always going to be there. Oh, for sure. Councillor Ruben Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Let's say we're building the North Hike and Relief Road and we come across a few Roman coins. What sort of process, could you tell us what sort of process it would go through, the timings, what sort of team you'd have available to get ready so it doesn't cause as much havoc as possible?
First of all, we don't actually have a team ourselves. Archaeological fieldwork is delivered by commercial companies, so the developer actually contracts them to deal with the on-site requirements. In terms of something like some coins that have been found, then that was probably found either through metal detecting or through evaluation. That would be of interest, but unless you've actually got one coin, which is the first discovery in the British Isles, that significance test is something where you go, okay, what else is going on around here? And there should be a sufficient program to understand that landscape context. And I think one of the things is that sometimes you get things which are very small and significant, and you get things which are very big and interesting. It's getting that balance right again, and how we actually work with that understanding and knowing with some certainty. And I think with that sort of scenario, we would step away from it fairly rapidly if there's nothing else indicating that there is a significant set of archaeological features or monuments here that we've not previously been aware of. And I think that's one of the things, is that the process of going through from initial stages all to field work, etc., there is a staged approach, and at each point you can come back from it. It's a lot harder to catch up to it.
So it would have to be something quite special to cause trouble, basically.
Where you discover significant archaeology, you have to think differently. And as I've said, if we can step away from something, that's what our processes are, because we go for the preservation in situ as the default starting position. That's not always possible, and therefore we move to the next stages. But that's always a considered process. This is not something which we do just because we're looking for things. That's not what we do as archaeologists in this context. And with that, we are always mindful of what the implications are in terms of what we're looking at and what we need to do to preserve that record, so that it goes back to feed into that historic environment record database and that story of that landscape and of the county and the wider country, really. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bailey Robinson.
Thank you. Just some reassurance, really. Are our museums resourced sufficiently to store and conserve those archaeological archives long term?
Thank you for the question. I'm afraid I'm going to have to defer to my colleagues in the museum service. We are connected, but we are not part of the same structure. Thank you.
I can forward that back to them. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments? No, thank you for that, Graham. Thank you for your presentation. I would like to invite. Oh, Anna, sorry.
Hi, I believe Nicole Hilton is able to provide an answer. Joe, if you're able to.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just in relation to the previous question about the ability of the museum storage and the Heritage Service to continue to accession items, which is the other half of the process that's been referred to. Obviously, there is a finite amount of space for all of the items that we find, and has already been outlined by the paper. Actually, for a vast majority, where the items are found in situ is often the safest and best place for those items to be left. Depending on a question about significance. So what this paper has done, and this revision of the handbook, is exactly what you're referring to, Councillor Robinson. It's about ensuring that we have a more modern approach to the items that we find, and therefore feel the need to accession. So there will be no longer a requirement for us to accession into our archives for lifetime storage every single item that is found. It enables us to be far more thoughtful about what our collections look like, and what we have in storage, both for research facilities, but also most importantly for what our public will be interested in and what we all want to display and make available to them.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Do we have any other questions or comments? No, thank you. This now concludes the discussion on the item. I'd like to propose that the committee is satisfied with the contents of the report as being shared the contents of the updated Lancashire Archaeological Handbook and additional comments will be noted. Please can you raise your hands if you agree? Thank you. That is agreed. And then move on to item 9, the Environmental Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. This item is on pages 59 to 64 of the agenda pack and sets out the committee's planned work programme for 26. Actions required by this committee are to review and agree the committee's work programme as set out in the report and highlight for discussion any additional scrutiny activity which could be considered for inclusion within the work programme. This report will be printed by Hannah Kolkoloff, Scrutiny Officer. Over to you, Hannah, please.
Thank you, Chair. So for the next meeting on the 27th of March, we've got currently 4 substantive items planned: the flood risk management update, streets design code, collaborative working on strategic flood risk management schemes, and the Salix scheme item as well. So that's for the next meeting on the 27th of March. It was also highlighted that we might want to ask members how interest is for an item on carbon capture storage schemes. It was brought up a few months ago, and officers would like to gauge interest on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Do we have any questions, comments? I'll take the committee members first, Councillor Ashley, if that's okay. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. Salix scheme, conclusion to scheme. Can you explain the red ink underneath it, please? And on a similar theme, I understand that a solar installation was planned for a fire station within Lincolnshire. Could we have an update on that as well, please? It was funded via the mayoral authority, but the money was devolved down to this authority to put into action. So has it happened? How much did it cost? What was involved, and so on?
Chris Miller has put his hand up to possibly answer this. Are you happy for Chris to answer on it? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Yeah, the red ink, the item may include the use of solar panels on council property. It was something Councillor Carrington raised in the last meeting about whether or not we could have a report on that, and we thought it was best to fold that into the one we were already having on Salix scheme, because that will look at the opportunities going forward for us to be able to invest in that on our property. The solar panels that you're referring to on council buildings, I'll pass that back through to our property services section to provide a report.
Yeah. Do you have any others? Yeah, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. It's more of a point of, I'm not sure if it's an item which would satisfy the full committee for an agenda item, but it's something that's really kicking off in my mind in Grantham particularly, is sustainable transport, active travel and such like. It would be really good to have an understanding of how the council via highways, etc., deem active travel and sustainable transport, and the way that affects planning decisions within obviously the district councils, because we're seeing a lot of things where basically it says, well, highways are happy with sustainable transport in this area, therefore this will go through, and the actual residents and the local councillors are going, we don't have sustainable transport. And it's just something that would be really interesting to understand how our function of that affects what happens as far as housing estates and development goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Yes, I'm sure we can put something together. I mean, active travel usually gets reported into highway scrutiny, but there's no reason why between myself and Warren Peppard, who's development control manager, so who gives that advice back into the planning authorities when it comes to developments, who comes to this committee, why we can't put something together to bring here. I'm sure we can manage that at an appropriate date.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey Robinson.
Hello, just regarding the carbon capture that was requested on the 27th of June, that was requested by myself when I was a regular member of the committee. And it was just generally just to explore that, the sort of safety risks and environmental impact, and then popped out those comments to the portfolio holder. So if there are any progression with the pipeline underneath going from Immingham to Thedlethorpe, then at least then he's got a bit more sort of comments from the committee about that. So if that's more suited for when that progresses further, if you want to put it then, or as soon as possible, then at least then it's those comments have already passed to the executive.
Did you want to comment on that, Chris, or no?
I'm sure we can provide a report as and when it's appropriate.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much. Councillor Reuben Robinson.
Thank you. In the apologies, the street design code for next time, could we have a like a miniature report inside it regarding street lighting and looking at the new options we've got for street lighting? I know the executive are looking at the moment about the different designs for that as well. It's something which is a big problem in my particular area. We want to get them back on as soon as possible. Thank you.
I can contact the relevant officer and find that out. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. I will bring in Councillor Ashton now. Is this part of the programme itself, or is it a district council related?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just if it might be helpful. I note you got Jane Froggatt at your next meeting. I'm just aware that Jane has given a presentation at the Sustainable Flood and Drought Management All-Party Parliamentary Group in January on Environment Agency main river maintenance and the withdrawal of some of that maintenance. I don't know if that would be of interest to the committee or to yourselves, either on, at your next meeting or perhaps a future meeting.
No, thank you for that. Do we have any others, comments, questions? Chris?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just the whether or not it'd be an appropriate time to move the Anglian Water Reservoir item from the proposed potential items onto the actual agendas. The executive has received a briefing from Anglian Water already, so now would seem the appropriate time to move that onto the full agendas. And looking at what we have, potentially I can ask them if they could come and present on the 15th of May, because at the moment we don't have any flood and water items on that agenda, and it is quite a brief agenda as it currently stands for the committee to decide, obviously.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Do we have any other? Councillor Baxter?
Thank you. I'm not opposed to having an update on the reservoir, but the last update I had on the reservoir said that they might put in an application in 2028. We're unlikely to get a drip of water, of useful water from that reservoir till mid 2030s. What's a more pressing issue from Anglian Water at the moment is the infrastructure to supply the forthcoming housing that the government are that the country needs, or the government says the country needs. What's preventing district councils approving housing schemes around the place is the lack of infrastructure, including electricity, but more particularly water supply and water disposal. So the water that comes into your house and the water that goes out of your house, we haven't got the infrastructure to take it away. So if we're going to invite Anglian Water in, can you get not only the person that deals with the reservoir, but also the person that deals with that?
I think as a separate item, it might be more useful to have Water Resources East come to present. Anglian Water sit within that, as do we as an authority and the other local authorities in the Anglian Water region. So it looks at on a region wide, because you can't really take Lincolnshire in isolation because it's a regional water body. So I can certainly have a discussion with the executive officers at Water Resources East, see if they'll be able to come and present at some point in the future.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Oh, but there's a few suggestions there. Did you get all them noted, or will you have to play it back at some stage, Anna? Right, I think that I think everybody's happy with that then, yeah. Right, well, I'd like to propose that we approve the planned work programme for 26, subject to the considerations of any considerations of any items highlighted in today's discussion. Do you please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you. That concludes the meeting for today. Thank you all for your attendance and your contributions, and have a safe journey home. Thank you.